Hi, everyone. Jim Rizoli here. Right now, I'm in Texas. Okay, I have Kathleen Dudley with me today. Well, today we are going to talk about men. You men out there. All right, we're going to talk about you and what has happened to men, because it's really horrible, the things that have happened to men, and then you men don't even know what's happened to you. Okay, because of a lot of women movements and all the type of things that have to do with men. Okay, so I'm going to let Kathleen do all the talk, and if I have questions, obviously I'll ask questions. But Kathleen, why don't you just tell us, if you want to explain the topic you're going to be talking about, and then we'll go into the deeper aspects of it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jim. It's always a real pleasure to be on your program. I'm a holistic reflexologist, and I work with diet, I work with homeopathy, I work with supplements, all the holistic elements that help us maintain our health and help our bodies heal. And I've also become extremely involved in the whole the constitutional aspect of our rights. And it's curious how they dovetail, and I'll get into that as we talk. But I began writing a book back in 2017 about the assault against our men. I began to see what was taking place, and I'm continuing that writing. It's been interrupted a little bit as I've been in the courts, securing my rights, guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, to not be plundered and harassed and various things. But I wanted to talk about today, Jim, was the assault against our men that's taking them out of our families, removing them as the keystone of our families. And many of these assaults come from the environment. But I want to point out that they're planned, and I want to go through a number of these assaults that hit men. And the very positive thing about all of this is when we become educated about what is happening, why our health is being eroded, why, we see women stepping up and maybe men not stepping up as much in many cases. It's because there has been this attack against them. But the very positive thing is that we can reverse all of that. We can reclaim all of our sovereignty, both in terms of our health and also in terms of our own ability to stand up against the tyrants in court situations and everything. It's all about sovereignty and empowerment. So that's where I wanted to begin. Do you want me to just launch in, or did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, let me just preface this to say that the reason why we're doing this is because I think someone made a comment about you saying you were wrong about something about the men's situation, and they were taking you up on it. I think it had to do with men, like rights with kids and all that, how the women get all the rights and the men don't. Right. I think that's what.
Well, there was some of that, but what really there was a statement about how women needed to take the responsibility to go out and change what is going on that's happening today. It's up to the women to do that. And then following that was a statement by this person that they were an unempowered white male.
Okay.
And I found that statement to be very jarring, very shocking. For one thing, once the men are taken out of society, then the women end up being taken out. And really, we evolved to where we are today together in partnership. If it wasn't for a man and a woman who were procreating, we wouldn't be here today having this conversation. So for a man to say he was unempowered and it was up to the women now to stand on the battlefield and alone, which was basically a statement, it was enough for me to go, okay, Jim, let's have a conversation about this. Because
now let me ask you a question here. Yeah. Would you say that the reason why it seems like there's a big imbalance here between men and women is it's like a competition? Okay. Now I'm going to give you my opinion. Okay. I think the reason why there's why the women have actually taken over. I don't think it's because they're mean-spirited or whatever. Some might be. I'm not saying they're not, okay? I think it's because a lot of men have dropped the ball. and doing what they should be doing. And then they should be stronger in the family unit, doing what they should be doing. But again, I know if you have someone's going to hit me with that and say, oh, I had a wife that she was so horrible. Look, I understand that. Okay. But a lot of men drop the ball too, right? I mean, what do you think?
Well, there are many factors that present themselves there, Jim. And the fact that women have become so, stigmatized these days. I mean, we're talking about a programming that has happened. First, you introduce, the CIA is behind it, Tavistock Clinic is behind it, MK Ultra is behind it, the programming of the television, everything is behind the divide and conquer. As I said, not that it's easy to be in relationship. There's always struggles, but men and women have always come forward from generations to generations together, procreating and being in relationship. The fact that there was this huge feminist movement in the late 60s and 70s, and all of a sudden women were pushed into the workforce and men were clamoring for position and power, and there was a struggle. That was all programmed. That was all created, and we have been suffering ever since then. And so, at the turn of moving from into the period of time of agrarian society, when men and women were working on the land and they had domesticated animals, that really changed relationships. And the woman no longer was working quite as closely with the man. He now had the plow. That was kind of his team. And the woman was creating and producing the babies. But that was kind of the beginning of when relationship really began to start to fall apart historically.
Can you pinpoint that what approximately a year or a time period? If you could say, here's when it really started to go in this direction.
I don't have a date. I'm not sure when. I'd have to go back to. I'm not sure when people stopped living just as hunter-gatherers and went into the agrarian society. So I'll have to look at that and send it to you so you can post it below for people.
Okay. My opinion is, I think probably in the 1800s, especially with the Industrial Revolution type thing, that when things started really getting mechanized, a lot of things started getting mechanized there, and then the people started moving into cities. Okay, leaving farming, getting into the cities.
This would be much pre that. A couple of hundred years or more before then.
Okay.
But let me go into this. It's really unfortunate that there's so much hostility and this divide between men and women, because it doesn't need to be there. And both men and women need to step back, and women really need to step back and allow a man to be a man. So many women, encouraged through the feminist movement, have been ultra aggressive, and men need to claim their sovereignty. And there needs to be a respect between a man and a woman, and not a domination, not a hierarchical domination, but a longitudinal, where we're working together and recognizing a woman. Femininity is about receiving. A woman needs to recognize that she needs to learn how to stand in her own feminine posture and receive, and not be the one that's always opening the door and going through first, because she's opened the door for herself, but to allow the man to open the door for her. There's a lot of very interesting elements to those old traditions. A woman today often doesn't even really know what it's like to be a woman, and to be treated like a woman by a man. So we have to go back and really reclaim that. And we don't have many examples of that either. But let's go back to, the assaults against our men and how we kind of came into this place. So there's a physical assault that happens. There's a spiritual, a mental, and an emotional assault. And if you look back at the wars, you send off all of our young virile men to the wars. And in the United States alone, 93% of the years this country has been a United States of America. 225 of those years out of 239 have been in wars.
Wow.
Now that's huge. And you think of all the young men that are killed, and the women, the young women and their children that are left to then have to raise those children without their men. And we know that these wars are paid for by the central banking system, and they fund both sides of the war. And they know the outcome of every single war. So we know they're perpetrated. We know that's one of the main ways to take our men out. They're cannon fodder. The next
I want to just bring up a point just to throw some facts. So let's just look at World War One. Okay, approximately about 120. I don't know if you were going to bring this up, but I'll bring it up. But approximately 120,000 men, United States servicemen, died in World War One. Approximately. Wow. Okay. All right. So that's World War One. So you think about 100,000 men that never, I'm sure some had families, but some of them even didn't. They never even were able to have a family or even get married. Gone. Okay. So they're gone. Okay. Then the ones that maybe come back harmed or hurt or whatever, that's going to be a problem. And then we get World War II, and I think it was like about 500,000 or 600,000 men were killed during World War II. So there you go, folks. You have just within 30, 40 years, 600,000 American guys gone from America. So I just want to throw that in there.
Well, that's a profound statistic, and it's quite shocking, and it's riveting. And then you look at what happens. And it's a good time period to look at, because that was during the time when socialism and communism really spread, right? Mm-hmm. And what does socialism and communism do? It completely dismantles one's own ability to thrive and drive, because that entrepreneurial spirit, that creativity, that it's squashed. It's absolutely put under a rock. And we see that in communist countries everywhere. And I had some friends, he was from Czechoslovakia, and they went back after it was no longer under Russian rule. And his wife was a psychiatrist, he was an engineer, and they toured. He hadn't been there for 25 years. And he said everyone was absolutely floundering. They didn't know what to do. They were always told what to do the whole time under communism. So when you take away the drive, that collapses our men. Everyone has to have purpose, but our men need purpose. And then, of course, there's the corporatization of the country, and the government was corporatized in this country in the 1800s, and the railroad came in as one of the main corporations as well. And corporations absolutely squash individual drive as well. And the whole entrepreneurial element of this country was based upon individuals setting up their businesses and doing what they know best and thriving. And that sense of purpose was very satisfied, even though it was a struggle, even though it was very difficult. But the whole corporate nature of this country has again put a cap on the capacity for men and discouraged men to take their creative capacities and thrive through that. And then there's destabilization of the cultures. If you look at again, right around that same time of the corporatization of the United States, there was an opium trade that was brought in to this country. And it also happened in China at the same time in the late 1880s by the Sassoon family. And if you look at China, an extremely long-standing, stable culture, and all of a sudden opium dens and everything changed. And in this country, the drugs also infiltrated. And so it collapsed the society yet again. And that really set up the influx of all these addictive substances that have then flown through like a stream that has gone through the heart of the entire country. So you look at and there was a really fine book that was mentioned on one of your interviews by someone who was posting, and it was by Dr. John TIlden, and he wrote this book in 1926, and it was about how if you want to really be in a healthy, empowered body with an empowered mind, then you don't want any of these substances that are enervating. So you want to make certain that none of the toxins are sitting in your body as a result of these substances that are ultimately going to cause disease. And he said, so you must be in control of your life. So again, that whole sovereignty picture comes up. It's like, how do we assert our capacity to be in charge of our life? We have to do it on all those levels, the physical, the spiritual, the mental, and the emotional. And the men continue, because they're the keystone of the family, to be the ones that have taken the assault, the strongest. So we have all of these addictive substances that have been normalized and habituated in our society, starting with alcohol. It's an addictive substance. Pot smoking, and while it was never claimed to be addictive, it's habits forming. And we know that it has tremendous harm, and I'll go into some of that. It increases the level of estrogen in the body. It actually activates the breast cells, the breast tissue in men. And so when you see breasts on men as young as in their early 20s, you're seeing this estrogenic activity. It lowers the testosterone levels also, and it decreases their own sexual drive. So these are very serious aspects of pot smoking. And while it might not be so-called addictive, it does actually impact their own maleness. And so when we look at the insidious nature of all of this assault, first with just outright war, and then the emotional aspect of not providing or allowing or creating enough opportunity for men to assert their own creative forces with work. Then you look at these substances. Then with alcohol, it increases aggression and violence. It causes an inflammatory response in the body. It thickens the blood, and so those kinds of things start to set up again a physical environment, which ultimately in time leads to disease. It also creates, like all drugs, dopamine hits. And we have only a certain number of centers to receive dopamine hits every single day. And when we satisfy those, and if we do that through alcohol or drugs or pornography or whatever it is, we don't have any natural response. So then when we go home and we interact with our loved ones, we don't even have that capacity at that point. It can be very immobilizing, and it interferes with the connection then in the relationship level. Now, all of these things were figured out. It was all known. All of this has been perpetrated. We have been very innocent. Our men have been innocent. Our women have been innocent. No one is to blame other than those that have been perpetrating this with this mad intention to take our men out.
Yeah, I mean, this is really deep stuff here. Because when I think about, okay, first of all, the wars, I mean, you could be killed right there, right off. You don't, okay. And what did they give the servicemen all the time? Cigarettes. They hooked them on cigarettes right at that point too, and the alcohol too, alcohol and drugs, because that's in order for the men to put up with all the nonsense of war and all the stress where they're there, they have to do something themselves to kind of get away from it. So obviously, smoking and drinking and drugging is going to be their way of getting away from it, but they don't know it's just going to compound it. And you're not going to forget this. It's going to come back and bite you in the ass later when you get back home.
Well, and you mentioned a really good point. There has to be a relief. So let's say your opportunity to create your dream and support your family has been nixed. You still have this desire to be fulfilled. And so that's one of the things about many of these different drugs is they create that sense of euphoria. The alcohol can create a sense of, I'm an aggressive man, but it often leads to violence and harms the intimacy in a family or relationship, often leads to a physical altercation, and so these drugs are there to create this outlet. And yes, during the wars, definitely, and going to the smoking, that was all set up, and no one understood the toxicity level of smoking until well into addicting about 70% of the American population who smoked, and so there were 56 million smokers in the United States in 1984, and each year more than 350 died prematurely as a result of smoking. This was from a book by Dr. Elizabeth.
That's all there were is 350 people? You think it would be like 350,000?
That more than 350,000. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
350,000. I'm sorry. Okay. I must have misspoken.
Yeah, I was going to say, boy, that doesn't sound like too many people dying, because smoking is one of the biggest reasons why people die today.
And it wasn't until the 1950s that the actual harm from smoking became known. And by 1978, a third of all the cancer deaths in the United States were from smoking. So the harm is extremely deep. And after 30 years of smoking, an average person would have smoked 200,000 cigarettes, which would have included 10 pounds of tar that would have gotten into the respiratory system. Now, and you have to realize too, Edward Bernays was the master during the 1930s, who brought in this whole campaign to bring women into this whole smoking elite. And that was one of the most egregious advertising campaigns, and he was known for that. And they were the women who smoked were called the cigarettes were called torches of freedom, and he was known as the father of spin. So you can see just how devilish and how manipulative this has all been. And then if you go back to to sugar. We're born with sweet receptors on our tongue so that the baby will suckle and thrive. But unfortunately, our body can only manage a teaspoon of glucose on the cellular level every day. So any more than a teaspoon of glucose in our body is setting up disease. So it sets up pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, high blood sugar, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, overweight and obesity, heart attack or stroke. It thickens the blood. It can break down the arterial wall. So, and it shows when you do a brain imaging, it shows that when you take in sugar, this is, refined sugar, but it's any sugar. It's a sweet center. The body doesn't delineate. You put sugar in, whether it's honey or high fructose corn syrup, whatever. The body's registering it as sugar. The limbic center, which is the addictive center in the brain, registers that, and it kindles just the same as it does as if you were snorting cocaine or injecting heroin.
Yeah.
It's creating an addiction. And what that means is that you're creating this neural pathway, and you are setting up this this brain gut relationship, and your body is becoming habituated to this substance. It is known as a drug, and yet almost every substance, everything you buy, has some form of sugar added to it.
Right. I can make a comment here. See, correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I understand, the medical business says that we take in 40 teaspoons a day, an average person, of sugar. 40 teaspoons. Have you ever heard that?
Well, I don't have that stat in front of me, but that's a lot. It might be. I mean, if that is, it's no wonder diabetes.
But think about it. But think about it. You got to remember. Okay, let's say one person. Let's say they have a drink, carbonated whatever drink they want, sugar drink, whatever. Okay, as far as I understand, that's got I think it said 8 teaspoons of sugar in that. I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's a lot of sugar.
Well, Jim, that's the thing that most people just don't understand. And when in writing this book, what's so fascinating, and it's like doing any deep dive into history, you start adding all the elements together and you go, wait a second, we've got a story here. We've got a story that needs to be on ABC, breaking news, And,
but I tell you, I'm glad you're bringing it up, because it's just interesting. Within the last 2 months, I think, right before I came down here, I came here middle of February, I got off of all sugar. I used to, I eat little sweets and this, but not only sugar. I got away from breads, anything that was doughy or anything like that, because that all is converted into sugar. So my diet now is basically no sugar, no breads, no whatever you call it, carbohydrates. Is that what it is? Yeah. Yes. So I've done my best to get away from all that, and
that's extremely fine. You're on your way to really healing and health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because what happens with sugar also is it sets up inflammation in the body.
Yeah.
And so we go, oh boy, I've got a pain in my back or in my knee or my joints in my hand or my wrist or, wherever. That's inflammation. And underlying every single disease in the body is inflammation. But like the allopathic system of medicine always looks at, oh, well, then let's just give you a cortisol shot. Let's eliminate the symptom without ever looking at what the cause is. And if most people were just to correct their diet and what that takes, and I want to ask you this, did it take you some discipline to do that, Jim?
Well, I just made a decision, right? One day I just said, because remember, I used to love having little cakes and ice cream and this and that every freaking day. I had the cookies and anything relating to that. Processed foods, a lot of processed foods. Yes. So I've gotten, like, let's say if I have a hamburger, like, you get a hamburger, you put it in a bun, I'll just have the hamburger without the bun. Okay. Yeah. It took a little bit but not bad. I just put it in, my health is not good. Believe me. I just want to let you know, I got some issues, but I think I've already ruined my body to a degree. That's why I got issues, but I'm happy to be alive, and this is the direction I'm going now. I'm not looking back, and I can't fix something I did years ago, but I can stop, hopefully, it from getting worse. That's all I can do.
But that's the fallacy too, Jim, is that our body is in spontaneous healing. Our body can repair pretty much everything and anything if we get out of its way and we give it the correct nutrition. Mm-hmm. Most people do not understand that. If you were to go on a regimen that I put together for you and you use that discipline and you would not recognize yourself in a year, I can guarantee you that. Okay. And that's the thing that is so amazing, because we're so unempowered. That American Medical Association that was formed, let's see, when was that? That was in the late 1800s, and they were competing with the homeopathy profession that had spread from Germany, that Samuel Hahnemann had put together and discovered in the late 1700s. And it was thriving in the United States. And then the AMA, funded by Rockefeller and the Carnegie Foundation, blew a whole bunch of money into their faltering competition against homeopathy. And then all of a sudden, they came up with the Flexner report, and they made everybody comply with this, with this Carnegie, Rockefeller funded Flexner report that said, you have to follow our guidelines, or otherwise you can't do any medical work at all. And this whole AMA competition with homeopathy was all over money. It had nothing to do with principles, and it's always been about money, and we see that today. And they ultimately ended up starving out the herbalists and the homeopaths, and until there were hardly no colleges and universities for homeopaths. And then the AMA really set strongly, and that was right when Louis Pasteur was being paid by Rockefeller to promote the germ theory in the late 1880s, right? So all of this dovetails, and today they're trying to bring this big resurgence back of the AMA, and in fact, it's all about toxic drugs and pretty cannibalistic surgeries, rather than looking at, maybe no processed food, maybe you do what you do, Jim, and you diminish the amount of sugar to zero, and you don't eat carbohydrates like breads that are high in glucose, and they also set up inflammation because it's glucose, it's sugar. And all of a sudden, the body starts to respond differently. That neurological pathway where the brain is saying, give me more sugar, give me more sugar. Well, your discipline has dismantled it. And within 30 to 60 days, that neurological pathway has shifted. And all of a sudden...
That's true. That's true because like you asked me, did I have a problem with it? But once you get off it and you close that sugar pathway, you don't really even desire it. I mean, honestly, you kind of like, it's not an issue with you. I mean, that's how I feel anyway.
Yes, and it's also interesting to find, because I've been doing a particular method of eating. It's a ketogenic method of eating, and really what's behind that is 8 to 10 cups of leafy green vegetables and other vegetables every day, because we need around 2,400 milligrams of potassium every single day for proper cell functioning. And you get that through these leafy vegetables. And if you don't get that, then the cells aren't running at their optimal level. And if the mitochondria doesn't have that energy to be able to give to the nucleus in that cell, then we're putting along instead of zooming along. So that's one element of it. And most people think, I have too much fat in my diet, because of that whole low fat thing. Most people don't have enough quality fat in their diet, because our brain is 70% fat.
Yeah, I would say that if again, I'm not perfect with this because I don't know everything about it, but I would say that I'm more or less on a kind of a keto type of diet. What I'm doing now as best I can. I mean, I might have a potato every now and then, with some chicken or something. But other than that, that's probably the worst thing I ate. You know what I mean? So,
well, being on a ketogenic diet doesn't mean you don't eat meat. You can. Oh
no, I eat meat.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
okay.
I eat eggs for breakfast every day. And,
Good.
I mean, I do. There's a guy on YouTube I follow. I watch him every now and then. I forgot his name. He's in that.
Dr. Eric Berg.
Yeah, he's great.
He's fantastic, and I can't recommend him highly enough. And if people were to go and look at how to go onto a ketogenic diet, their health will improve dramatically.
Yeah,
And
no, I've been watching his brother. I mean, his videos because my brother had some issues with his liver or whatever happened. Something got plugged up with him, and
yes, jaundice, gallbladder.
yes. So anyway, he's not jaundiced now. I guess they helped him out or whatever, but he's still dealing with doctors, and I think that's a problem. Whatever.
You say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that.
He's still dealing with the doctors.
Oh yes. Well, and that's one of the things they've really programmed us into being afraid that if we don't go to an allopathic doctor, something horrible will happen. And what I really like to encourage people to realize is that we must be the master of our own ship.
Yeah.
That we need to empower ourselves. We need to educate ourselves how to take care of our own selves and not go to an allopathic doctor who's going to give us high blood pressure medication and then all the other medications that follow. When in fact we can take cayenne pepper to lower our blood pressure and support our bodies. We can use herbs and food as our medicine. And, when people go and they get a job, they are given healthcare insurance. Well, that's one way to shackle them to the AMA immediately. And then, so they've thought it all out. They know exactly how to do that. They've killed off all the herbalists. They've closed down all the homeopathic universities. They've done the best they can possibly do to remove licenses from any doctor who discovers that there is something holistic to be done rather than using toxic pharmaceuticals. And, it's just astonishing just how we have been inculcated into a system that just steals our money and steals our health at the same time. I want to talk about another element that is
okay. Let me just. I just want to sum something up right now because this is important. Because if someone tunes in and goes in the middle of this, they're going to hear it's like a health. We're talking about a health thing. No, this all had to do with the problem between men and women, and you're just showing us what some of the problems are physically in regards to what people do with their bodies to pollute it, to make them have problems that come into this other situation in relationships, right? I mean, you got to have a good body, a healthy, strong body, and you got to keep away with the crap that's going to jeopardize your health, that's going to jeopardize or could jeopardize a relationship later. I think that's what you're trying to say, right?
Yes, it is. And I mean, I was going to talk about coffee, but I want to talk right now about.
Are you against coffee? Because I drink coffee every day, 1 cup.
I'm not against any of these things. I'm against the fact that they have been used as weapons against men and women, and that the science behind it, the actual health impacts behind them, are hidden from us. Now, anytime I hear something that's repeated, like there was a point back in, around 2013, 14, I started hearing all the doctors were recommending coffee, and coffee with oil in it, and oil is really important, coconut oil, olive oil. Those are really healthy plant-based oils. And they feed the brain, and and just a little side note, but Alzheimer's and dementia are caused by can be caused by too little fat.
Right.
In the brain, and it can be reversed by diet. I had a client who was on whose aunt, she put on the ketogenic diet based upon what she was doing with me, and her aunt's dementia started to move away. She started to become healthier. It was a very interesting experience.
Can you follow up on the coffee thing though? Because I was off it for a while, and I just started drinking when I come down here.
So caffeine is highly addictive.
Okay.
So, and again, it does the same thing as sugar in the limbic center. It kindles there's a kindling in the limbic center. It causes inflammatory responses in the body. And curiously, it also covers smooth nerve pain. So if you have any kind of injury in your nerves, the caffeine in the coffee or in chocolate or all of these other things that have caffeine in it covers the smooth nerve pain. It also constricts the blood vessels. So, therefore it can cause high blood pressure. So you can imagine all of this is leading to heart issues, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also leading to erectile dysfunction, because when you have a healthy heart, you have a healthy erection. Mm-hmm. And if you are starting to set up inflammation and you're starting to set up high blood pressure, then, you're impacting your own sexual abilities. Mm-hmm. It also dehydrates the blood. So all of these, and it leaches out magnesium from the body. Now, magnesium is needed in the heart. It's needed in the heart muscle for relaxation. You pump, and it must happen for a healthy heart. So caffeine often is used as a pick-me-up, and what it does is it overrides our own natural energy level. So by the end of the day, after all this caffeine, we're exhausted. And the next day we wake up and we're exhausted because we push too hard. So people who are on coffee that is caffeinated have no concept of what their natural energy level is.
Yeah. So what do you recommend? Again, it's not a big deal with me because I was off it for months, and I just came down here but you know what I put in it? I put turmeric in it. Believe it or not. I mean, that might sound weird.
So what I do, Jim, is in the morning I grate up fresh ginger root, mm-hmm. and I put a teaspoon of turmeric, and I put a tablespoon of coconut oil, and then I pour hot boiling water over it. So the turmeric is, it's an anti-inflammatory, as you know. And you can put
so that's something positive I'm doing with my coffee.
Yes, it is. But what you're doing is you're going like this, instead of just moving with the body. So, you're trying to counter the inflammation that the coffee is going to cause. But if you do the turmeric and the ginger root, which is very soothing on the gut, and also it's an anti-inflammatory. So, and it's wonderful tasting. And a lot of these things require developing a taste, but in time they become very, delicious. Now, also, a lot of people will drink coffee that's not certified organic. And that's grown with tremendous amount of pesticides and herbicides. And a lot of it is glyphosate. Because these are GMO crops. Now, glyphosate has its own horrific story to it. That's in Roundup. And it was designed as an antibiotic in the 1980s. It's now, the patent is over, and so it's being produced by the gazillion pounds every nanosecond in China. And it's in all of our water, our air, our soils by this time. And all the cars that are run off canola oil and all those things, or corn oil, that's all GMO products. So they're spewing it out the tailpipes of their vehicles, thinking they're being environmental. What this all means, Jim, is that, these herbicides and pesticides, including the glyphosate, are generally handled by men.
Oh, okay.
Right? I mean, do you see too many women out there doing that kind of work?
No.
So what does this glyphosate do? This glyphosate has estrogenic properties. Again, it interacts, and it decreases the testosterone and the amount of estrogen, synthetic estrogen, that is put into this man's body is all of a sudden spiked up. And that changes. That changes a man. It changes the timbre of his voice. It changes his cells.
Well,
Again,
wouldn't you say, I mean, what I'm seeing where this is leading, okay, is when we see what's going on with all the gay crap and the transgender crap, obviously something's happening here, okay, right?
you betcha. And it's been going on for a number of decades. So you get the glyphosate, which is, it's a cancer and hormone disruptor. It explodes the gut in insects. That's how it is used in the fields. Well, it explodes the tight junctions in our gut cells. So there's no integrity between the interior of the cell and the exterior of the cell. And we wonder why there are all these intestinal problems like Crohn's disease and intestinal bowel disease and all these things. But regarding the feminization of our men, all of this is causing the feminization of our men.
Yeah, no, I always believe that. I feel that there's a lot of stuff that people are taking that's just making them like girls, and you can see it.
Yes, and then you add in, the bisphenol A, that's the building block of all plastics. Now, bisphenol A was first brought about, and it was used for the first menopause drug. What they had to take it off the market because women were dying of cancer from it. What they found was that it increases the estrogen levels in rat studies, and they gain weight. And when they gain weight, this is estrogenic. And so what we start seeing today is we start seeing men with hips and women's thighs, and we see breasts on men. And that exposure to all this bisphenol A from sucking on water from water bottles and babies being raised with plastic water bottles and all the food being wrapped in plastic and all of this for how many decades?
Yeah, no, you're right. I know. This has been going on for years and years.
And then industry came up with, oh, well, we have an alternative. We've got bisphenol S and F. We no longer have anything wrapped or stored in bisphenol A. It's the same thing. It's just that we haven't caught up with their lies and deception. It's the same thing because it's the building block. Bisphenol is the building block of all plastics, and it's dangerous. And it causes cancers, and it causes tremendous amount of image issue as well, because here are people going, why am I gaining weight? You know?
Wow. So I notice what people will, let's say, they want to drink water. Everything's in plastic. I mean, you know what I mean? So you're drinking, you might get water, you're drinking water, but you drink it in plastic because that's all you can find is bottled water, right? I mean, where are you going to get it? Unless you have good water, you put it in like I have a cup here, is a stainless steel cup,
Good.
But other than that, drinking out of anything with plastic, that's not a good thing. That's for sure.
It is not a good thing because it's what's feminizing the men in our society, and it's what's causing the weight gain, and it's changing the body type and the body structure. But we have to be discerning, and we can find water in glass, but not in Allsups or not in the dollar store. We have to start planning. We have to start really protecting ourselves. And I've been doing this, and I've been studying this since, I was in my early 20s. And so I've been kind of keeping a step of all of these horrific measures that they keep unleashing upon society. And when I moved to Oregon, in 2014, and I started seeing all these women's bodies on men and all these male breasts on 20-year-olds, on men. I went, whoa, what is going on here? And that's when I started realizing the assault against our men, our warriors, because men are supposed to be strong in testosterone. They're not supposed to have female breasts. They're lean, strong. And so when we start seeing that happening when men are young, we know that this is really an assault. And but the good thing is all of this can be turned about with the education, with the knowledge, with with the discipline that it takes to change what we put in our body. We've heard that saying, you know, our body is our temple. And so what we put in makes a big difference. And, you know, so, you know, I go back to, I never really could drink coffee because I was really susceptible to the caffeine, and even decaf coffee I couldn't handle much. But I was drinking some caffeine in teas. So I thought I would do an experiment, and I would just go off all tea, just everything other than herbal. And for 14 nights, I couldn't sleep. My body went into withdrawal.
Wow.
And I wasn't a coffee drinker.
So you think, well, of course, you mentioned what you make for your drink in the morning, but tea's probably not as good either because it's got caffeine.
Well, any tea that has caffeine in it will increase inflammation in the body. Again, every disease that we have in our body, the underlying that is inflammation. And in this book by Dr. John TIlden that he wrote in 1926 called TOXEMIA, he states that, you know, there's a habit that is behind every disease. So if we really are wanting to reclaim our health and reclaim our sovereignty, because really our sovereignty is all about being in charge and not letting anything be in charge of us, not letting a food determine how we feel or how we're able to be fluid in our life. So we have to take on that responsibility. And he says, so, you know, we have to be honest and take a look at what is it that we really want. And we have been so manipulated into accepting that we're old when we're 50, or we're old when we're 60, or we're old when we're 70. Our ancestors have lived well into their hundreds and thrived in their blue zone areas around the world, where people live well into 130 and 140. And one of the keys is activity. It's exercise. Mm-hmm. It's wholesome food that's not, you know, streaked with chemicals. And it's activity where there's, you know, we're exercising our heart, cardiovascular activity. Mm-hmm. Where we're breathing fresh air, and where we have a spiritual life and we have a purpose. And all of these things we have to look at as the whole package. And when we do, oh boy, you know, we're forces that can't be stopped. But we are being stopped, and that's the problem. And with men feeling like they are unempowered because they're a white male, it's because they haven't stood in their own sovereignty and really looked at themselves and gone, oh, this is what I can do. Oh, okay, I can improve here. I can change what I'm eating. I can change my thoughts. I can, you know, there's method to this madness.
But you know, it's hard, and I can understand this. You know, because I'm by myself. I'm with Diane here, but I mean, we don't have any kids here, nothing. But if you have a family with kids, so now you're dealing with kids, and when you buy food, you're buying it for the kids. So think about if you want to do good for yourself, and you get away with this stuff, but then, you know, you're giving all the kids the crap. And it's hard not to fall back into the crap because it's in the house. You see what I'm saying?
But we need to be the models, right? I mean,
I understand. So basically,
buy the food for them.
That right. In other words, if you're gonna do this, don't just do it for yourself. You know, if you got a family, do it as a family. I tell you, it's gonna be tough for guys with families because I know these kids. The kids today, you know, they're already been hooked, and they're all crazy on sugar, and they're crazy on this, and wow, I mean, it's a tough haul, I tell you right now.
It's a really tough haul because these are all addictive substances. There's a book called, I think it's Fat, Sugar, Oil, and I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was written about the bliss test of all these processed foods. And what these manufacturers do is they bring in a group of people, depending upon what age group it is and, what ethnicity or, financial, whatever. And they test their foods out on them. And what they do is they come up with the exact bliss taste for each of those foods. So if you think about a potato chip and you think about, they determine exactly how much oil and how much salt and how much sugar to put into that substance so that they reach the bliss point, and that makes the consumer want the next one.
Oh, yeah.
Not enough to satiate you, not enough to say, that's not that great, but just enough. Have you ever, I can't eat one potato chip. And now I realize why. It's the bliss test that they market.
I used to love potato chips. Okay. But I heard that in potato chips will put a lot of fat on your belly. You eat a lot of potato chips, you're going to gain fat and weight with potato chips.
Well, but you see what's happening there, Jim. It's not the fat, it's the glucose.
Okay, yeah.
So what's happening is you're taking in more than a teaspoon of glucose for that cellular function of your body that day.
Okay.
And so what happens is that the cell goes, no more, I can't take it. I'm rejecting it. That glucose goes into the bloodstream, and then it's circulating through the blood, and it goes, okay, where can I be deposited? And then it's deposited in the fat cells.
Yeah.
And that's what puts the fat on the body. It's not right. It's not the rolls of fat. It's not the fat itself. But they're not using quality fats. They're using vegetable fats, which are harmful in and of themselves. So we have to really educate ourselves. But what you used, again, discipline. You went, no, not going to eat that. So we have to go back through and go, what is a healthy diet, and how can I discipline myself from all of these very addictive substances that have nothing to do with my self-control, because by now there's a neurological pathway that's been set up between the brain and the gut saying, feed me, feed me. It's a neurological addiction. Yeah. So, people don't realize that they're being duped by industry.
Oh, no, I hear you. I mean, I'll tell you, health and diet and all this is a tough thing. Like, I know people listening to this are probably going to scream, because you're going to say, there's no way in hell I'm going to stay away from drinking, a beer, hard liquor, whatever. I'm going to stay away from, sugary things. I know that they're going to say that, but the point is, it comes to a point that you really have to do it to survive. I mean, we're dying. I mean, we're just dying right now. I mean,
if we follow the current trajectory for reproduction in this country, I think it was like 2054, we won't be reproducing anymore. I could have that date slightly off, but now, this is an interesting definition of sovereignty that Dr. John TIlden wrote in his book called TOXEMIA. And it says, a normally healthy person is one who is poised, self-controlled, and who has no nerve-destroying habits like, addictions, right? A self-controlled man is a man who is not controlled, kicked, cuffed, or driven by habits. Now, I found that absolutely astonishing to read that, because here, I'm standing in my sovereignty in these court cases, fighting against these tyrants being sovereign, and they want us to be enslaved by them. But the same masters are using the environmental toxins. They're using all the lies about the standard American diet that's killing us, that's feminizing our men, taking our keystone out of our family, destroying our warriors with all of these estrogenic exposures, confusing the children with the gender issues. And it's all a pre-programmed attempt to collapse us. And they're doing a fine job. But again, the beauty of all of this is that when we're educated, we don't have to be a cannon fodder for them anymore, because this is the way they're warring against us. It's not putting us on the battlefield and putting us in front of a machine gun. They're doing it through toxic methods. And that, I want to say one more element, that you think the alcohol, people are going to say, oh, no, I'm drinking, or no, I'm drinking my coffee or my booze or whatever, or the pot, I mean, those are my pleasures. But I'll tell you, if we can reach our pleasures through our own spiritual ascension, through our own health, well, I can swear by it. It's a much bigger high than the artificial methods. But then you look at the Wi-Fi and the cell phones and the harm that is coming to us from that. How many men who are watching and listening to this have their cell phone in their pocket?
Right.
In their pants?
I know, yeah. And I see women do it too. Yeah.
Well, women wear it often up here, and they found that the breast cancer tumors are in the same shape as the antenna of the cell phone.
No, I know.
But what happens with erectile dysfunction is that low frequency confuses the energy centers of the mitochondria, and that erectile dysfunction has now gone down into affecting men in their 30s and 40s. It's so pathetic. Well, it's no better way to stop the procreation of a civilization than to dismantle our men sexually. And that's exactly what these cell phones are. They're weapons. And people are holding.
So I know you're not, I mean, I don't know what your view on cell phones personally, if you have one or you don't have one, whatever, because everybody has one. I mean, I have one right here. Okay. What do you recommend?
Well, I worked with Arthur Furstenberg for a number of months back when I first moved back to New Mexico in 2018-19, and I was working on Wi-Fi and cell phone and the whole 5G issue, and I learned a lot, and I threw away my cell phone at that point.
Okay.
I don't, this weapon can be turned on and off at will by the external users. It fries our brains, causes brain cancer, erectile dysfunction, DNA damage. We're going to start seeing tremendous amount of babies born with DNA damage as a result. Infertility in women. It's like when you start adding up the whole picture, it's like, well, what do you like more? And I know people have said, I love my cell phone. And so I have a landline. I have all my computer equipment hardwired in my home.
Right, but when you go outside, obviously you don't have any cell phone.
You betcha. And these cell phones are relatively new. I mean, it was the early 90s when they first came around. We survived really well without them. I travel long distances by myself without a cell phone. They're so addicting. They're more addicting.
I bet you in our conversation today, the toughest thing that people are going to have to deal with is the cell phone.
Yes. I'm sure it is because it is every time the phone rings or we get a text, that's a dopamine hit. It makes us feel good.
Right.
And that dopamine, but it depletes our dopamine. It's probably the most heinous, most dangerous thing in our life, if you were to look at one thing, because without the cell phone, we couldn't be controlled like we are. It's astonishing how one's life changes without texting, without being able to grab a phone.
Okay, let's say, I know, I mean, even my cell phone, I do all my work with people sending me this but I don't like having the cell phone on me, or when I talk, I have it on speakerphone. I try to keep it away from my body as best I can. But some people, they're on it in their head, holding it all the time. I put the cell phone down. In fact, I don't even have notifications on it. If something comes in a notification, I don't even know if it's coming in because I don't care. Okay. But it's a tough sell, believe me, getting rid of cell phones.
Well, it is, but I guess again, the thing is, ultimately, we have to make choices, and we have to decide who's more important here. Are we important, and are we important enough to have a high quality life where our bodies are healing and where we're not in pain? I don't have any body pain, and I'm on no medication. Now, the amount of people who have debilitating diseases and are on medication in this country is staggering.
Oh no, I know.
And every medication has toxicity factors to it and symptoms. And many times we chase one symptom with another toxic medication until finally the body is overwhelmed. And, really, I don't like being in pain. And so my choice is, what do I do to live a healthy life so that I'm the most sovereign that I can be? And that's what I would encourage men. I would say, men, we need you. We really need you. We need our warriors. Please take the steps to empower yourself, to come back, because you can reclaim all of that manhood that you have lost or that you're questioning about. All of that will come back if we take the correct posture. And, because by consciously or unconsciously forfeiting your warrior status, you've put the women and the children on the forefront. And it's a very vulnerable place for us, because women aren't men. We don't have the muscle. We don't have your capacity. We're women. We're feminine. You're masculine. And so I really urge men to really consider what to do and their solutions. And another thing I wanted to mention, and I do this not really so much, I suppose, to promote myself, but I do consult with people, but I do it on a donation basis. I've become so disgusted with the corporate structure of this country, and most of the services are done so that we can barely, if at all, afford anything of that nature. And even then, we're begging for toxic substances. And so this is possible for anybody to be able to find a pathway back to their healing. But it does take the discipline, just like what you've said. It's not an easy.
Okay, so let me just kind of, let's just finish this off. What time is it now? Yeah, we're going a little bit longer than usual, but that's fine. What good books can you recommend? Okay, and then we can talk about how people can get in touch with you. They have to talk to you, your website, stuff that deals with what you do, because I think everybody got to know this stuff. So first things first. So you did mention a couple books during our discussion. So let's hear them again.
Okay, so I'm not sure that I have the full name of his book. Yes, it is TOXEMIA Explained, and it's by Dr. John TIlden. It was written in 1926, and you can actually go onto archive.org and you can read it there. And there's also a PDF link. I can send that to you.
If you send it to me, I'll put it in the link to the video.
And it's excellent. And my own perspective of how to heal isn't completely in alignment with his, but very much it is. Okay. I think going on to YouTube and listening to Dr. Eric Berg.
Yeah, he's good.
He's excellent. And those two, anyone who's interested in homeopathy, it's a very complicated subject. can delve into that, but I certainly recommend that.
Well, what you could do is just give me all the links. I'll just put them in the description, and people, they can run with it, go look at all the stuff. I think the problem with health stuff is people don't know where to get it. And if you show them, here's some good links, like that book, you talk about the EMF and all that, Wi-Fi. I forgot the name of the book.
Invisible Rainbow.
Yes, Invisible Rainbow, incredible. My brother Joe's got the book. Once you find out what the Wi-Fi is doing to us, and that's another thing with this COVID nonsense and the vaccine and all that. I personally think that the vaccine could be a problem. I'm not saying it's not, but I think a lot of people's problems could go back to the Wi-Fi and the electric, EMF forces that we're surrounded with. Our cells are being destroyed every day. I mean, this is the way it is. But that's a good book. We could put the link up to that too.
Yeah. And so, without getting too many choices can be overwhelming, but to have some very good choices. So I would say that the one by Tilford is probably one of the best ones I've read in a long time. I've got some others that I can recommend, but I really liked how hard hitting he was, because it's true. If you put any kind of toxin into your system, it needs to detox. And that's all that flu is, or a respiratory illness is. It's just detoxing from.
I mean that's the COVID nonsense and the vaccine nonsense. A whole nother story. What happened there? I mean, what are you going to do? So there's a lot we can do, little by little. I know it's overwhelming. People are going to hear this and there's no way I can do this. But start small. Okay, I'm starting small. Okay, I'm doing little things, but. It is what it is. We just got to work our way through it the best we can. At least try something or do something. Make some progress in what you're doing. Just don't accept what you're doing. If you want to start eating better, then start eating better little by little. You gave some good suggestions.
But eating better is a catchphrase. Most people don't know what eating better means.
I know.
So eating whole organic foods is the better. Eating lots of vegetables and primarily leafy greens is the better. A high quality fat, again, is the better. And intermittent fasting, where we're not always putting food into our mouth. And one of the little nuggets on this, which is fascinating, every time we eat, Jim, we release insulin into the blood, and insulin releases glucose.
Oh.
That means that if we snack throughout the day, we're constantly releasing glucose into the system and overwhelming the cells, setting us up for diabetes. Becoming insulin resistant is what that's called. So probably one of the best things that people can do as an intro to this is to go and listen to Dr. Eric Berg's ketogenic diet. That's like number one. I've listened to a whole bunch of his videos. In fact, that's probably why I got on my diet that I'm on now, is because of him. So I do understand that, Good.
Yeah. Well, okay, Kathleen, this has been great. I mean, you got a lot of great information for the people out there. But again, this whole conversation started because of the fact that we have a real problem between men and women, and the women are taking over now. It appears to be, and the men are sitting back. But there's reasons why all this happened, and I think we dealt with some good information there. And if you guys out there have any comments or any information you want to share with us, if you want to put some good comments on the channel, hopefully you will. Look at this as something helpful, okay? Not as Kathleen's your enemy, okay? I mean,
but Jim, this also goes for the women. I mean, the women have to incorporate this too if they want to.
I understand.
Healthy bodies.
We get this. Everything applies to them too. We know. I understand that. Okay, I do understand.
I guess I'm not as aware as you make it clear that there's so much hostility by men toward women, but I've had people say that to me, and I just and so it's a bit of a shock and a real disappointment because, boy, you know, women need men and men need women, and we need to be able to, you know, work together.
Yeah, I understand. Health has a lot to do with it. So if you at least get on that track of that, that will be helpful. And that's all I can say on that, you know. Okay, Kathleen, look, this has been great.
Thank you.
Give me all your information and we'll put it in the description. And if you have something else, I know Kathleen and I did a video last time. You know, we're talking about constitutional issues, so another whole issue there. Okay, what's going on with our rights as people on the earth living here, dealing with the government, dealing with courts, dealing with she's pretty much an expert on that because she's been going through the court system and has learned quite a bit just by her own court problems. How are you doing there, by the way?
Well, I've just finished one objection to the second court order in a second case. And so I'll be writing another document that will be putting this in the Court of Appeals. So I will have 2 cases now in the Court of Appeals. It's a little unnerving at times because the courts are totally corrupt.
Right. And Kathleen, you're representing yourself, right?
I speak for myself sui juris, so I'm not a part of the corporate structure. I stand absolutely separately from them, not accepting their jurisdiction. They don't like my terminology, but it keeps me completely out of the statutory legal system.
Well, maybe we'll have to do another video on how that works. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
I just put up a video of this fellow. I think it was Colorado. It's not that long of a video. It's on my BitChute channel now. It's right up there. It's not the greatest video because it's on the phone, but the guy got stopped and he had no license, no registration, no nothing. Okay, and what he had to deal with, and I guess they let him go. Okay, so the point is, he used, I guess you could say, his constitutional rights or whatever to get out of this by just telling the cops the truth about what's going on. So people can watch it on my BitChute channel because it was a really interesting video. You know.
Well, Jim, you might be interested to know. So I was stopped speeding, and I went through the court system, and I won. Based upon my using my constitutionally secured rights. I was stopped recently without a registration, and I'm now in the courts again and using an affidavit, and 5 magistrates have recused themselves so far, and I'm still waiting to hear from them about bringing another magistrate on. So they're not wanting to deal with the constitutionally secured rights.
Okay, well, we can, if anybody has any issues with that, you might want to get in touch with Kathleen. Maybe she can give you some pointers on what to do there with the courts, because that is a big problem.
It is a big problem.
Yeah, real big problem. Okay, Kathleen, look, I want to thank you for being on. This has been Kathleen Dudley talking to us today, and she's got a wealth of information about health issues, about constitutional issues, about a lot of things that determine, are you your own sovereign, right, Kathleen? I think that's what we're trying to get to here, yes. Controlling your own person and not being enslaved to whatever you're enslaved to, okay? I mean, you could be doing it all right, eating right, doing this right, feeling great, but then you got to deal with the courts, you got to deal with the government, you got to deal with all this nonsense. Another problem. But and I guess we could talk about that probably another time. All right.
Right. And just to plug my book that I'm writing, so there will be a place to go for people soon, I'm hoping, because I'm writing about all these aspects.
Okay, no, that's great. Once you get that done, we'll talk about your book and get people to see it, okay? All right, Kathleen, thank you so much. It was good seeing you again. And we'll talk to you another time, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.